Good evening and welcome to Crash Talk. I'm Mike Harbour, your host. And if you're here right now, we're live. Otherwise, this will be posted. I believe this will be episode number 5. Let me start over just in case I was a little bit too fast. Good evening. This is Crash Talk. I'm Mike Harbour, your host, and we are live. And got a very interesting show for you tonight. I appreciate you coming and participating, being here, and taking your time to be with us this evening. So first off, and I don't have my script to read, but I'm going to go from memory that I am not giving legal advice. Any information that's given here tonight, either by me, Mike Harbour, or anything that's provided through Crash Talk, any of our guests, any written information, anything on any of our sites is not intended to be legal advice. If you need information regarding an insurance claim that has to do with legal matters, then you should consult with a licensed practicing attorney in your area. We do have many attorneys that we work with all over the country, and if you need a reference to a good attorney, let us know. We'd be more than happy to help you with that. The same goes true. Last week, we talked about one of the most important things is choosing the right shop in the very beginning. We also have a list of shops that we are very confident in their ability and their willingness to work with you and help you get a proper repair. So if that's something that would be of interest to you, let us know. Tonight, and I already gave the disclaimer, so what we're going to do, we're going to talk about Insurance 101. And I'm going to have to move this around a little bit. It looks like it's not quite in there. So what I want to do is I'm going to get up. I'm going to get up, and I'm going to probably have to move this a little bit more because I can't write left-handed. I'm a righty, and I'm going to probably have to adjust things a little bit. So just bear with me. Okay, first thing with an insurance policy. Now let me ask a couple questions. All of you should have some form of insurance. I would expect that you're abiding by state law to have the minimum requirement, which is liability. Have you ever read a policy? I don't see any show of hands, so I would assume that means that you have not, and that's pretty typical. So what about, do you understand that that's a contract? Have you ever purchased anything in your life without knowing what you bought? That you paid money, but you didn't know what you bought till after you bought it. And then after you bought it, and it comes later, what it was you purchased, did you pick it up and read it? I suspect not. This is where I'd really love to have some sound effects because it just would make it a little bit more interesting. So let's talk about this a little bit. You spend a lot of money on insurance, but you don't know what it says. So that's what I hope to give you a little bit of insight tonight to understand what it is you bought, or maybe what you didn't buy and you need to buy. So let's talk about it. Well, first off, an insurance policy is made up of several parts, and it's really not as complicated as it sounds. It's not like reading a phone book. It might seem like it when you start it out and you just open it and none of it makes any sense to you. So I want to try to break it down. I want to try to make it so it's simple so that you understand a little bit more of your rights, but not only that, to understand areas that you aren't covered, or if you do something to violate the contract, you could be in a world of hurt. So let's talk about a few of those things. So first off, we'll call this Insurance 101. Hopefully everybody is able to see this all right, but I wanted to put a few things up here on the board so we can put them down, talk about them. The first thing is what's called a declaration page. Now, a declaration page is just simply a declaration of what it is you purchased, how much did it cost, and what are the elements of the purchase. Or if you go to the grocery store, you get a bag and you buy milk and butter and eggs and some lettuce, and then you put those in the bag. All right. So what we're going to talk about is the eggs and the milk and the butter, and inside, it's all inside that bag, the policy. So you've got a declaration page to start with. The declaration page, if you've been with the same insurance company for years, and most people stay with the same insurance company until they have a bad experience or they want to save money and they start shopping around. But a declaration page will be sent to you each year upon renewal, along with any changes in the main body of the policy. Now, I have a sample policy here, and I don't think I can get in trouble for this. It's a sample. There's nobody's name. This is, and I wanted to give them this. Let's give them a little, a little spiff here. So, like a good neighbor, they've got this is the policy. All right. I don't think many people have read all of this. Now, they actually put it in a little booklet size. I printed it so I could read it to you tonight. So, and I think Progressive does the same thing. They got a small little booklet. You get it and it just doesn't seem that important. You throw it in a drawer or whatever. And then each year when you renew, you get a new declaration page. Now, the declaration page is usually one page. Now, I didn't actually have a declaration page that coincides with State Farm. I have one, but I couldn't find it. But they're all the same. It starts out, and I don't want anybody's name to be seen here if they were to blow that up. But it's simple. It's one page, usually maybe two, and it comes each year. And what it does, it will show all of your property that's listed on the property. So if you got a car, a boat, or 2 or 3 cars, it'll list each vehicle. It'll tell what kind of vehicle it is, and it'll have what's called a VIN number. Now, a VIN number, and we throw terms around all the times in the industry, but so you understand a VIN number, VIN, that stands for Vehicle Identification Number. It's kind of like your fingerprint. It identifies, it's specific to one vehicle. That number has a lot of information in it. Tells where it was manufactured, tells the year it was manufactured, tells a lot of information, engines and all that kind of good stuff. But it's specific to that car. So each vehicle that you have has a VIN on your declaration page. And then it goes down and it says coverages. And this is what you bought. This is the eggs and the milk and the butter that you put into the bag. And it shows what the charge is for each one of those portions of insurance that you bought. Now, state requires you to have a minimum of liability. That's all you're required to have. If you want to drive around and take your own chance that you're not going to have an accident, that's your fault, then, so be it. If you have a loan on a vehicle, now you have another contract with a lender, and that lender requires you to have insurance because that protects the lender in the event of a loss. They don't want a wrecked vehicle back if you don't make the payments. So they require that, and they require that whoever you're going to be insured with sends a notice to them that they have you covered and you're paying your premiums. If you don't make your payment or you change companies, they will notify the lender that, Mrs. Jones is not covered with us anymore. And then your lender is going to come to you and say, either you get coverage or we're going to force coverage on you, and they're going to add it to your payment. So another matter, covered it in another session, but let's get back to insurance. So the declaration page shows what you've purchased. So on this particular declaration page, it shows, it says combined single limit for bodily injury, property damage, and liability. So this particular consumer had all of those, and it's got personal injury protection, uninsured motorist, bodily injury, and property damage. And this I think is important. Our episode number 1 talked about how important uninsured motorist protection is. And here's a good example. the collision, bodily injury, property damage, and liability comes to $509, and that's for 2 vehicles. But the uninsured motorist is $55. That's what I said early on. It's the best bargain there is in insurance. Insurance companies don't push that because it's a loser for them. You need to make sure, and I'm going to probably say this every time we're on here, you need to make sure you've got uninsured motorist protection. Bodily injury is one type of uninsured motorist protection, and property damage is another. There's two different categories under uninsured motorist. So then we get into collision comprehensive and then additional coverages. And they've got, you can have rental, you can have rental reimbursement, you can have a number of other things, medical, you can have, there's supplementary coverage. So, but let's get into the policy now. So when you're looking at a policy, the first thing, like I said, is a declaration page, but you get that every year when you renew. But the policy usually comes once, just because there's a lot of it. It's expensive to print nowadays. Most of these are online, so you can go online, you can see your policy, you can print it if you want it, but you really need to understand at least the basics of the rules of the game. Okay, so let's look at it. So let's start out. I did this to make things a little bit faster, and so I wouldn't make any spelling mistakes, and people would get a kick out of that, right? So the policy is made up first off of definitions, and you'll get a kick out of this if you read the definitions. I mean, it explains who you are, who we are. It talks about the vehicle. It breaks it down so there's no misunderstanding. So there's definitions, that's where it starts. And there's a table of contents to start with. And when you look at the contents, it starts out with the policy, the definitions, and then it gets under coverage. This is where it gets a little bit, where you got to make sure you understand what you purchased. And this is all going to be related to the declaration page, and everything in the policy will specifically say this coverage applies if it's identified in your declaration page. If it's not in your declaration page, you don't have it. So coverage, let's talk about the coverage. First thing is liability. Now, liability is the minimum. And this is where people get really confused, because liability is if you damage or hurt somebody else. Your insurance is providing you protection to indemnify you in the event that you make a mistake, you cause an accident. Now, this is the part that people get real confused. Your insurance company does not have to pay a claim unless a judgment is entered in against you. What does that mean? How does somebody get a judgment against you? I run into this little old lady over here, and my insurance company doesn't have to pay the damage I caused to her unless there's a judgment entered against me. A judgment is from a judge. Somebody takes me to court and sues me for the damage I caused. Then my insurance company has to pay, as long as I had the coverage. I purchased that coverage. Okay, so it goes on to say, in this particular policy, and the reason I picked this one along with this is the language in this policy, to me, is different than the standard policy that's kind of put out nationally that most of the insurance companies follow. Well, State Farm's come up with their own. And under the liability, it says that they are not required to pay unless you, the insured, is legally liable to pay. Well, you're not legally liable to pay unless there's a lawsuit brought. Well, what happens? Insurance companies try to get together and they try to resolve this matter without having attorneys involved and without going to court. And what most of them then go on to say, and this one does too, but it does it in a roundabout way, is that we have a right to investigate, negotiate, and settle any claim or lawsuit. State Farm, in this case, State Farm, but all insurance companies, it's the same. They have the right to determine if they're going to negotiate your claim or if they're just going to say, nope, we're not paying and we're going to wait for you to get sued. That happens quite often. And I'm sure some of you out there maybe had to go file a lawsuit in order to get what was yours because the other side didn't want to pay, or they wanted to pay part, or they wanted to negotiate, and you weren't willing to take 25 cents on the dollar. If you have a loss and you can prove your loss, that's what's owed. Now, I want to try to keep this as brief as I can tonight, and it's already looks like I've used up a little bit more time than I thought. This is pretty involved stuff. We could go into a whole lot of detail just on the liability part and what are your duties as an insured in the event of a claim. But here's a couple things that I thought were important right in the very beginning. That, for example, if you go out and buy a new car, well, you can't just jump on the phone, or maybe it's over a weekend. How do you know? Well, you're afforded coverage. If you're insured, you got other vehicles insured with a company, they will normally give you 15, 30 days in order to get notice to them that you just bought this new car. So coverage is extended on a new purchase. But as I was reading through it, there was a couple things that looked new to me. But let me move on. I could kind of get off on a tangent. Let me try to stay with the program. So we've got liability. That's the minimum. Okay. Yeah. So that's a little bit. Let me move this down just a little bit. Maybe I'll cut my head off, or I'll have to stoop down here a little, or whatever. So PIP. That stands for personal injury protection. It's another. You don't have to buy it. But, and I'm not going to get into bodily injury and those type of things, but it's there. It's something for you to consider. UIM, uninsured motorist. That includes people with no insurance, or if they don't have enough coverage to cover your entire loss. That's broken down into bodily injury, if you're hurt and the people don't have insurance or enough, and property damage. So you've got two types. You need that. Believe me, you need that. The next is physical damage. Now, this is where comprehensive, and it looks like I'm running out of more room here. So let me go down, and I'm going to be on my knees here in a minute. So we got comprehensive, and we have collision. That falls under physical damage to your vehicle. So it doesn't make any difference. Let me stop. This is one of these key points where most people miss the boat. Somebody else runs into you, they run a stop sign, they make an illegal left turn in front of you, they're at fault, and they get out of the car and they say, oh, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault. Their insurance company says, yeah, we're accepting the liability, we're going to pay everything. Well, we're going to get to the 3 rules at the end of the show. The 3 rules that I live and die by when I'm dealing with an insurance claim, and I try to instill into my clients. The person that hit you, they may be liable, and the person may feel terrible about it, but their insurance company is going to try and negotiate the claim. Well, if they're going to try to negotiate the claim, that means they're going to look for ways to save money. You're always better off no, there isn't any exception to this. You paid for insurance. Your insurance company, this is a contract. They have a duty to you of good faith and fair dealing. Mrs. Jones that ran into me that feels terrible, her insurance company has a duty to her, not to me. So, where am I better off? Am I better off allowing the at-fault party's insurance company to negotiate my claim? Or am I better off with my insurance company? Now, you can ask them to advance your deductible. You can ask them to go ahead and take care of your rental while repairs are taking place. When it's all done, your insurance company, as a provision of the contract, they have a right. It's called subrogation. They step into your shoes and they go back after the other insurance company or that party to get their money back. It doesn't go against your rates. It's service. It's what you paid for. So, collision comprehensive. And then towards the back of the policy, we have what's called the insured's duties. You have to do certain things. It's a contract. Both parties have a duty. If you've never read it, you don't know what your duties are. And if you violate your duty, you've breached the contract. If you've breached the contract, they don't have to pay. It's the same with them. They have a duty. If they breach that duty, then there's a provision in the law. We voted here about, I want to think 15 years ago on what's called the Insurance Fair Conduct Act. And if an insurance company makes an unreasonable denial of a claim, now that might not be the whole claim, but it might be an unreasonable denial of part of it. You potentially can go after your insurance company for what's called bad faith, breach of contract, and all kinds of good stuff for up to treble damages and all costs and fees. So it helps level the playing field to make your insurance company do what's right. Your insurance company has a duty of good faith and fair dealing with you. They don't. So that's part of the general provisions. We have gone through, it's somehow fast time goes by. Let me, I want to show you one thing. I think it's important to understand. Let me just give you a diagram. Sometimes visuals make it a little bit easier to understand, because to understand how this contract works, it's also important to understand the relationships when you have a claim. Okay, I'm going to do it as a triangle. Okay, at the top of the triangle is you. And I specifically put that there because you are the boss. Don't let anybody tell you what you have to do. You have rights. You have rights under the contract. You have rights under the law, especially if this isn't your fault. If it's your fault, you're going to abide by the contract. But if it's not your fault, you have rights. So here you are. Now, we've got either a repairable vehicle or we have a total loss. So the first thing that you need to do, we talked about this last week, is finding the right shop. Now, you have a relationship with that shop, and you're going to sign a contract for repair, and you're going to be responsible for payment for the repair. You. Now, wait a minute. People say, well, no, my insurance company is going to pay for it. Well, your insurance company has a duty to you. If you incur a cost and it's covered under the policy, then, I mean, you don't have to go to the cheapest hole-in-the-wall shop in town. It's your right to choose. Now, there's some provisions in this contract policy. We'll have to get to it in a later date. There's not enough time tonight, but it will be important to talk about the limits of liability and the provisions of the loss under collision and comprehensive, under damage to your car. But so I want you to understand, this is very important. Now you've got an insurance company over here. Okay, this is the insurance company. This is a body shop. And this is you. Now, Your insurance company, they have a duty to you. They have a duty to pay your loss less your deductible, unless it's excluded. And we can talk, we're going to have to do this in another session with what's covered and what's not, because that's probably a session in itself. Now, what happens if this shop has a contract with that insurance company? Then you got interference, because this shop has a duty to you. This insurance company has a duty to you, but all of a sudden, if they're trying to circumvent this, remember, they're trying to negotiate. You don't want anybody negotiating your claim. You want to be the boss. You want to be in charge. You want to know what's going on. You want to call the shots. So what typically happens is people come in, they think, oh, my insurance company is going to take care of it. Let them just work directly with the shop. You don't want that. And the last thing you want to do is, if the insurance company is saying, oh, just take it to one of our shops because it'll be just easy that way. Well, we're going to be showing some videos of what we see when the two of them get together and they leave you out of the equation and they figure out how to save money on your nickel. It's not pretty. So just remember the relationship. You sign a contract with the body shop. You're responsible. Once it's done, as long as this body shop is being fair and reasonable in their charges, and they're not fixing something that was a door ding on the other side of the car or something not related to the loss, that's where you get yourself in trouble. If you want extra work done while you're in the shop, you pay for that out of your pocket. Don't try to get that snuck in here. That's not right. That's called fraud. And you get chafed wrists for that. Or you get a denial of your claim entirety, canceled, all kinds of bad stuff. You have a right to choose this shop, have your vehicle repaired properly. Again, according to the terms of the contract. We'll get into that in some more detail in another session. Talk about more so you know what it says they will pay for and what they won't pay for, so you know when you're going in. Because I get calls all the time. Well, they want to put a Taiwanese hood on my car. Okay, another session. You'll have to stay tuned in. So just remember the relationship. Okay, and with that, let me give. I promised the 3 rules. The 3 rules that are just imperative if you're in the middle of an insurance claim or starting out an insurance claim. And believe me, if you follow these rules, it will go better. I promise. Rule number 1 is you never take advice from somebody that owes you money. I mean, didn't your daddy or your mom teach you that when you were little, growing up? You don't take advice from somebody that owes you money. I mean, that's just kind of common sense. The next one is equally as important. You always, let me move it down so you can see it all. You always communicate with an insurer in writing. Now, I'm not saying not to trust or anything else, but if an attorney taught me a long time ago, if it's not in writing, it never happened. And I've had attorneys tell me that they were told on a phone conversation with an insurance adjuster that they were going to do this or that or something else, and then it doesn't happen, and they get amnesia. You know what? I have a tendency to forget a lot of things myself. I kind of get poked all the time for that. So you put it in writing. Then you don't have to worry about remembering. And for you, it's going to give you protection. All right, rule number 3. So rule number 1, never take advice from somebody that owes you money. Rule number 2, always communicate in writing with an insurance company. And rule number 3, always follow rule number 1 and rule number 2. If you'll do that, trust me, Trust me, it will save you a lot of grief. And with that, I've used up way more time than I intended. I hope you got something good out of this tonight. And I thought I was going to get through some of the fine details of the policy, the contract. We'll get to it another time. I guess that from what I understand, some of this technical stuff with YouTube, that you can subscribe, you can like, but I would really like you to send me questions. You know, if for us to continue to do this, I need to know what my listeners want to hear. What kind of information can I share with you? I've been doing this longer than I like to even think about. But if there's something that I can help, something that I can help you on that journey so that you kind of feel like you know your way a little bit, so you don't get, blindsided, and you can call us. We answer questions for people all the time and give advice, and we're more than willing to do that. So you can go to CrashTalk.com. You can give us questions there. You can go there to get directly to the Crash Talk episodes. Like I said, there's a couple characters out there that use Crash Talk. And then we also have a Facebook page. And hey, I'm struggling with that kind of stuff, but we want to be out there. We want to help you. We want to continue to tell people what's going on. And like I said, we're going to be starting to video some of these inspections that we're doing for people that have had repairs and they don't know what to do. And the shop's saying, oh, that's as good as it gets. And the insurance company's saying, well, you got to go back there. And you just, they're doing this number. So we can help. That's what we do. So with that, I want to say good evening. Enjoy your weekend. Hope to see you next week. We are also looking for information from our listeners. We're thinking of maybe doing this bi-monthly as opposed to every week. It makes me tired. So, but we want to get out there. We want to help you. We want to give information. So I guess if you can subscribe, they always say, oh yeah, down here, push on that button. Hey, do whatever. Hope you got something out of this. Hope to see you next week. Good night. Have a good weekend.